MarkRogersTV just a few hours after LSU and Alabama were selected to play in the 2011 BCS National Championship game. It's my opinion that LSU and Alabama are the two best teams in college football. It's the opinion, as I hear from most analysts, that these are the two best teams in the country. But you know what? Who cares what my opinion is, and who cares really what anybody's opinion is? Championship matchup should be based on competition, not on opinion. That's pretty obvious. I keep hearing about the eyeball test, that just watch these teams play, watch everybody else play, that the eyeball test says that Alabama and LSU are the two best teams. Last season, the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl, and they lost 6 times. Who'd they lose to? I don't even remember. I'm sure among those 6 losses, they lost to some pretty bad football teams and looked pretty bad on occasion. So what does the eyeball test really mean? It means nothing. We are comparing teams that don't play common competition. Which brings me to my next point. The BCS system is obviously flawed. It's beyond that. It's ridiculous. It's stupid, moronic, and idiotic. But for as bad as it is, actually the BCS system would work much better in, let's say, Major League Baseball, the NBA, or the NFL. Follow me here. In Major League Baseball, they play 162 games. So let's say after the end of the regular season, they decide to cancel the postseason and say, let's decide who should play in the World Series. Okay, the American League, the most wins went to the New York Yankees. They won 100. The Anaheim Angels won 98. Those are the two best records. Okay, who should make it to the World Series? Well, they played 162 games, and actually they played 125 to 130 games against common opponents. A pretty good track record to go by in comparing two teams 130 times against the same competition. Same thing in the NBA, same thing even in the NFL. Even though they only play 16 games, take right now the Packers and the Saints in the NFC and the Steelers and the Ravens in the AFC, who appear to be the best teams in each conference. The Ravens and Steelers will play about 8 to 10 games against the same opponents, so they could be compared in some reasonable way against each other based on common opponents. Okay, let's move it on to college football, the one sport at the one level that relies on comparisons rather than competition in determining a championship matchup. And what do we have? We've got Alabama versus Oklahoma State. They didn't play anybody the same. No common opponents. We've got nothing to base it on. Selecting Alabama over Oklahoma State is completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. If anything, Alabama only beat 3 teams with winning records in FBC competition. And one of those wins was against Penn State, the only win for Alabama against an FBS opponent outside of the SEC. So you've got Penn State, probably the 5th best team in the Big Ten, maybe the 30th best team in the country, and that's Alabama's resume. That's what they've won. That's what they've done. Oklahoma State at least won its conference. And we could say for Clemson and Wisconsin, at least they won their respective conferences. Take Wisconsin, for example. Should they play in the national championship? Well, nobody thinks so, but they lost 2 games, both those games inside the Big Ten. So who outside the Big Ten has proven that they can beat Wisconsin? The answer is no one. So again, I state that Alabama and LSU, in my opinion, from watching a lot of college football, are the 2 best teams in the country. But that is not the matchup that is the most fair. We should have a playoff, but we have to deal with the BCS. So let's at least try to get the most fair matchup. I keep hearing that the regular season in college football by BCS defenders is a playoff unto itself. That the regular season, that's the playoff. Well, if that's the case, Alabama and LSU already played in. Too bad, Alabama, if you're the second best team. You already played in the playoff and you lost to LSU. Give somebody else a shot. That team should be Oklahoma State because it won its conference and it only lost 1 game. Houston cannot say that. Stanford, Wisconsin, and Clemson cannot say that. 1 loss and won its conference. Oklahoma State and LSU under the current system should play for the national championship. Because if we go back to 2006, Ohio State beat Michigan in the regular season finale, 1-2 matchup, 42-39 game in Columbus. Those two teams were considered the two best teams in the country. Buckeyes won a close one. The vote was manipulated. Florida catapulted past Michigan into the 2 spot, and rightfully so. Regardless of who was considered the two best teams, Michigan got its shot. So Florida deserved a shot. It got it. That's all that mattered. I also heard tonight that Oklahoma State is going to justify itself or try to make a statement by playing well against Stanford. Well, again, that's flawed thinking. Regardless of what Oklahoma State does in the Fiesta Bowl against Stanford, winning 50-0 or losing 50-0, it doesn't matter. That's like saying after the Super Bowl, if a team loses by 40 points, that team did not deserve to play in the Super Bowl. Well, yes, it did. It made it to the Super Bowl. You have to base the matchup on the facts that we have at hand right now. And what we have is LSU, Oklahoma State. That's what it should be. BCS defenders, please speak up and let me know what you have to say on this whole BCS mess on Mark Rogers TV.